Well, hello everybody, and it's great to be here with all of you. It's nice to be back in Cambridge, at least in a virtual sense. Um, so it's always great to see be with old friends and sort of meet some new ones. I actually graduated in March with my ALM from the Harvard Extension School, and I've been involved in international relations publishing for a long time. I was actually the editor of a publication called The Diplomat for 2 years, which is actually based in Tokyo, Japan. So I used to kind of commute back and forth to Harvard, up to Tokyo, and back again. So I'm actually now in Washington, D.C., where, as it was mentioned, I am the editor of the National Interest. So what I wanted to kind of talk to you guys about today is something that I've been working on for really a few years at the Diplomat and now at the National Interest. And really, it's just looking at how social media basically is transforming publishing, but specifically sort of in my genre, which is international relations. Just quickly, I don't know if the slides are up yet, but my first slide is actually a picture of First Lady Michelle Obama, and she's using the hashtag Bring Back Our Girls. As some of you might recall, about 2 weeks ago, and it's still actually in the news now, is the tragedy of Boko Haram and kidnapping over 200 young girls, which is a terrible tragedy. But I think
Harry,
this really
Harry, sorry
shows
to sorry to interrupt, Harry.
international
We're
relations is
having.
sort of,
Can you hear me? Sorry to interrupt.
yes.
We're just working on your slides. We're having a little bit of trouble getting them both up at the same. Having the slides up and having you talk. So give
Okay.
us. You can keep talking, but it may be 30 seconds or so before we get your slides up.
Oh, that's great. No worries. No
Oh, here we
worries.
go. We got it. We got it. You're all set.
Excellent. Okay, great. So now you can kind of see what I'm talking about a little bit. So this picture basically went viral. It was viewed millions of times, and it kind of shows the impact that just a picture or a video or a publication can have. I mean, with social media, everything can be shared, a comment, a video, anything. And it allows people to take content and really debate it with their friends, their family. I mean, all of you know what I'm talking about if you have a smartphone. I mean, just go on the T and you could see people, looking and reading and consuming media. They're doing it in a social format. So if we could bring up my next slide, that'd be helpful. I'll assume it's up. So I guess the first thing I have to say just very briefly is when I sort of give these type of talks, I have to give the natural disclaimer. Basically, any of my thoughts, opinions, ideas, they're not an editorial stance or a position of the national interest or some of the other places that I do work for. So just have to throw the legal disclaimer out there. So let's get to the fun stuff. So social media, in my opinion, in terms of any type of publication, news, really any media, it is a game changer. We all know social media is really transforming the way we receive and interpret and discuss news, information, really anything. Anything that can be basically put on a computer screen can be shared in some way. But I've really asked the question over the last couple of years as I've gotten very involved in international relations publishing. What about more serious sort of types of content, whether it's academic journals, important reports or essays, things that aren't so naturally like virally consumed. I mean, we're all aware of the TMZs and the Us Weeklies sort of sharing, the latest Kim Kardashian or Kanye West story. But what about more serious, types of information? And there is space for those type of things to be shared. Obviously, like I've said, social media allows us to share all different types of information and for things to go viral, so to speak. Well, things wouldn't be able to go viral and be shared among millions and maybe hundreds of millions of people if social media really didn't exist. And like I said, any type of content can be shared. Anything can really be shared in now a social setting. Basically, all content is now interactive. People, reading a publication, they want to interact with the author. They want to interact with the content. They just don't want to simply read it or view it anymore. So these are some of the things that I've been sort of thinking about in the last couple of years while I've studied at Harvard and sort of in my professional space. Uh, so I guess the question is, you have to think about it. How much of this information do you receive and take in your daily lives? I was actually, but before I came out, I was reading a study that a lot of the younger generation, people that are 18 to 24, a lot of them don't even watch the nightly news anymore. The normal 6:30 broadcast a lot of us grew up with. It's basically becoming obsolete very quickly. So if we could change to the next slide, that'd be great. So, sort of what I've alerted to, what about more serious publications? We all know the Us Weeklies, the TMZs, the People magazines, the CNNs of the world. They can break into social media. They can do it very well. They can do it very effectively. But what about the more academic, more, I guess you could say, serious types of publications? Essentially, is there space in the social media realm for them? Uh, I was editor of The Diplomat, which was a little bit more newsy international relations publication. We did a lot with President Obama's pivot or rebalance to the Pacific that was in the news just recently when he went to Asia. And we'd done a lot more newsy type things. So The Diplomat sort of was naturally focused on social media. We have over 100,000 Facebook followers. We had a very large social media following. But when I transitioned away from The Diplomat and became managing editor of The National Interest, I really wanted to kind of bring that social media focus to a more, I guess you could say, academically or more serious publication that has a lot more, I guess you could say, serious scholars. I knew other outlets had done it. I'd done my research. Places that you might have heard of, such as Foreign Policy, Foreign Affairs, they had made big jumps to social media. So I kind of wanted to see if I could do the same thing. So if we could jump to the next slide, that'd be great. Excellent. I'm assuming it's up. So I guess the question I asked in a nutshell is, can social media be serious? Like I said, the tabloid stuff always gets into social media, the breaking news gets into social media, but is there a space for other things? I mean, the national interest put out a lot of content that could be viral. There's a lot of things that we were saying. We talk about the latest issues of the day, whether it's the crisis in Ukraine, whether it's the rise of China, whether it's sequestration. We're talking about things that people should really care about. So what I wanted to know is could we get these things and be social? Uh, One of the things I noticed when I basically took over the national interest is we had a social media presence, but it was used very sparingly. It was, and that's something that a lot of publications do. Not used very often, maybe tweet 1 or 2 times a day, maybe a Facebook posting here or there, but things weren't really designed in a way to be basically social. So I wanted to change that. So if we can jump to the next slide. So when I looked at national interest, I kind of looked at the content we had and tried to see, how that could be sort of rechanged and retweaked to be social. I mean, we had the content. We have contributors from a lot of people I'm sure you guys are aware of. Henry Kissinger, obviously fellow Harvard alumni, Ian Bremmer, John Mearsheimer, Robert Kaplan, Harvard's own Graham Allison, Grover Norquist, many names that people were very familiar with who were saying very serious things. So what our goal was basically was to sort of transform ourselves to take this content and make it something that could be in a social space. And obviously there's revenue ramifications for these type of things. We're a nonprofit. We don't have to drive advertiser revenue or things of that nature. But the more traffic we have, the more appealing we are to advertisers. The more appealing we are to advertisers, the better content we can get. We can basically reinvest back in our space. So basically the master plan. So how did we kind of go about on this path? Well, there's a couple things you can do, and they're very simple things. You don't have to have 1 million Facebook followers or 1 million Twitter followers to be social and get in that space. There's a few tweaks that we basically made. The first thing is you need to have a little bit more fun with that basic headline. Now, you never want to be dishonest. You never want to say something that isn't true, but you need headlines that are sort of action based, ways that sort of captivate your audience and bring them in, but in an honest way, because we are a journal. We are not CNN. We don't have breaking news all the time, so we can't sort of do those type of things, but more action based headlines. Another thing that we brought in is we really tried to really frame and sort of develop a package with our articles or pieces. So we would put very strong and very interesting pictures in them, something that would allow it to be more socially and Facebook friendly and Twitter friendly. Also, we posted a lot more on social media. Uh, Something very important a lot of publications forget is people are reading you 24 hours a day. So with that in mind, you really need to be posting at 3, 4 o'clock in the morning. Just because your audience, you're in Washington, you're in Boston, it doesn't mean that people in New Delhi or Tokyo or other places are reading you. So kind of when all that got packaged together, what happened? Well, before we came out with a new website, which I'll get to in a second, our readership actually expanded by 5 times doing some of these different things, by just being more social. Uh, 40% of our traffic actually now comes from social media. And we don't have a huge social media following. We only have 19,000 Facebook followers, about 11,000 Twitter followers, but people are constantly sharing our content. They might not be liking us or following us, but they are listening to us, which is very important. And actually, on May 6th, we rolled out a brand new website, a brand new national interest website, which I encourage all of you to check out. It's really excellent. We embraced a lot of different tweaks to make us more social media friendly. We have a social media bar where people can share content on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Google+. We have at the very bottom of the page social commenting tools, something called Discuss. So you can write in a comment and talk about the article, and that will actually be shared with your friends and colleagues on Facebook and Twitter. So one thing I think it's important as I sort of wrap up here, what are other IR pubs doing? Well, Foreign Policy and Foreign Affairs, they are embracing this actually. They are embracing social media, but what they did at the same time is they put up a big nasty paywall. So you can't read a lot of their content very readily, whereas we have no paywall. So that's sort of limited the amount of social media interaction they've been able to have. And I guess I would sort of leave you with this sort of final lesson, if I will. Basically, you can actually monetize your content, with a lot of ads and things like that, but not something that's obtrusive. And you can really embrace social media. As long as you don't do it with a paywall, you really can have amazing results. I mean, we have now, millions of page views a month. We have a very active and rabid audience. And really a lot of good things have come just from some minor tweaks and just really embracing a medium that's already out there. So thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
So Harry, we're just switching back so everybody can see your face for the Q&A. Questions?
Hello. I go to China quite often and take teachers over to teach Chinese teachers of English American methods, and have been in other teaching experience too. Is your site accessible in China, or is it blocked?
That's an excellent question. We are not blocked in China.
Okay.
As when I used to actually work at the Diplomat, we were blocked for a little while, but that was actually opened up. It's funny. We sort of cater to all audiences and all ideas. So we do embrace a lot of, I guess you could say, unique Chinese viewpoints.
Mm-hmm.
We actually had the Chinese foreign minister about 6 months ago write a very important piece about the Chinese dream and sort of how that's moving through their government and their own social media.
Mm-hmm.
So I think sort of allowing lots of different viewpoints sort of has given us a unique advantage in that we're not, as far as I know, we're not blocked anywhere. That's a great question.
Would you be interested if I got in touch with you later? I'm taking 20 teachers to Hangzhou and Fuzhou again this summer, and the exchange that goes back and forth between the Chinese teachers and the American teachers is really quite interesting. If perhaps it's something we could talk about.
Absolutely, I'd love to.
Yes, hello. I wanted to ask you, I'm certainly going to be visiting your website, but what if you were going to articulate what it is, how your site is different than others, or what information, if there's a certain strain you present, well, how would you describe your site?
Sure, that's a great question. Two things. First thing I would say is the national interest really represents what we call a realist perspective in international relations. In other words, really advocating a more pragmatic U.S. foreign policy, not necessarily non-interventionist, but maybe a little bit less away from some of the neoconservative and some other viewpoints that are out there. So that's one thing I would offer. The second thing I would offer is that even though we sort of have our own editorial line based on realism, we really are open to any and all sort of normative ideas. In other words, even if you're on the spectrum of maybe the left, spectrum of the right, that doesn't matter. We're open to the best ideas, the best debates. We have debates, whether it's on the rise of China or Russian actions in Ukraine. We've had actually a lot of Ukrainian nationals and different folks coming in, sort of talking about facts on the ground and a lot of things that the media misses. So we try to be unique and original and sort of fun and obviously social all at the same time.
Harry, I'm realizing we haven't heard the URL of the website yet. I'm assuming it's nationalinterest.org?
Nationalinterest.org, okay. Yes.
Other questions? Oh.
Hi, so I have a question of, as also an IR scholar, and there are many IR graduates emerging now, As an academic journal, I assume there's some academic journal, what advice would you have to those who wish to publish and considering publishing in the national interest?
It's a good question. I think really, I can tell you just very honestly, I wouldn't be in this business if I hadn't published early and often. I think it's an important thing, and it can be a game changer for sort of a young scholar who wants to get in this field. The first thing I would do is I would look at some of the smaller publications. There's really a great one. It's called EIR. You can find it on Google, and they're really a great outlet for sort of younger scholars, maybe people who are undergraduates or in grad school, to sort of publish and sort of get their name out there. The editors are very good with sort of working with younger talent to sort of show them, the push and pulls and things that will be helpful. Barring that, really, to be honest with you, I know Harvard has a great class at the Extension School that sort of teaches you how to pitch editors, what things work, what tools that they can use. Really, it's getting your name out there as much as possible and really doing a lot of publishing. But I also wouldn't discount internships. I mean, a lot of people who are getting in this field have 3, 4, 5 internships. I had about 4 to 5 before I really was sort of gainfully employed. So really what you need to do, just in a very quick answer, is you really need to develop sort of a package of skills that you can bring to an employer. Obviously, this is a very competitive industry. It's very name driven. A lot of people who have been in this space have been in it for 30, 40, 50 years. So sometimes you're competing with those people. So really what you need to do is publish, develop that niche specialization, and really package yourself to be really the best at one thing that you really can be.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Do we have any other questions? All right. Well, it's about that time, so we're going to take a break. Thank you, Harry, for dialing in.
Thank you. Thank you so much.